We close out my tour through the City of Angels with a hot take. Knott's Scary Farm is better than Halloween Horror Nights Hollywood. Well, that's my review. Fine. But only because I love my fans almost as much as I love the sound of my own voice. If you're as smart as I am and you book a hotel in Buena Park to save on parking at Knott's, you owe it to yourself to take a stroll down Beach Boulevard just to appreciate the lighting and decorations that the town puts into the holiday season. It's a small gesture, but this detail reminds me when I was a young kid carnet. Alright, no time for memory lane. Knott's Scary Farm is the last of 3 attractions I learned of from the Travel Channel, the other being Delusion and Dark Harbor on the Queen Mary, which unfortunately didn't participate in this year's Halloween. However, it's good to know if Halloween is around the corner that Knott's Scary Farm is open for business. 2 standout deal makers over why you should absolutely attend Knott's is, first off, their sheer volume of events.
This place is gonna have everything. Ghosts, ghouls, goblins, my son.
Every place has mazes, but Knott's doesn't go for houses based on TV or film. I mean, you can say I'm a demanding little diva, but whether it's my Treehouse of Horror chapters, Dead by Daylight monsters, or theme park mazes, I just prefer original concepts, and Knott's Scary Farm delivers. If that didn't harden your nipples enough to carve diamonds, Knott's has 5 scare zones throughout the park, as well as 6 live shows that you actually want to see. For these staged events, the venue combines horror and humor, which undoubtedly serve as the ace up their sleeve that catapults them above competing theme parks. In years past, I've attended Elvira's show, and it was a definite hallmark. Without further ado, on with the show. Pumpkin Eater wasn't just the first haunted house on my venture, but considering its proximity to the entrance and its theme, I highly recommend this as the initial maze for all visitors. Any scary concept involving pumpkins in Halloween would have been welcome, but the fact that this house takes the nursery rhyme from the grim fairy tales and gives it a dark twist is greatly appreciated. You see the fate in store for other trespassers into this maze, as flesh melds with pumpkin guts, or what I call the Amy Schumer special. The use of sound is superb, as you're continually looking around for what is in there with you, and where, and oh, what the inhabitants within have in store for you as you bear witness to all manner of terrors that have taken up residence within the pumpkin. This one's not for the thin of skin. A solid attraction and an absolute must first stop. He'll put you in a pumpkin shell and ensure you'll scream like hell.
In good time.
Well, fellers, we done shot Injun. We done burned us some bank robbers, gunslingers, mavericks, and tough hombres. What's that? No tough hombres? Not even a little? Well then, let's just do what we always does and hang us a witch. Hee-you!
Who doesn't love them a good western, partner? Plus, a witch in the West is a nice twist from the standard pilgrim setting you'd expect. Pilgrim? This is what I'm referring to when I express my gratitude that Knott's crafts original houses with stories you can read up on or experience in their mazes. If the house host working up the crowd with talk of a hanging doesn't set the sought-after tone, the waiting area where the line gathers will definitely get you in the spirit of things. More than any other maze, this house is decorated outside to prime your fear factor to face what's inside. Abandoned stagecoaches, a graveyard, wanted posters, So saddle up, hombres. You're in for the long haul with this one.
Welcome to the Waxworks.
The haunts just keep on coming, as next up is this impressively good maze. This house is tied for my favorite venue of the theme park. The Wax Museum class of horror film has sadly lost its steam over the past decades in favor of the killer doll, which I find strange because this subgenre turns humans into dolls.
This place has everything.
Presidential reenactments, botched plastic surgeries, classic monsters, a dollhouse, a beehive, a torture chamber. As you can see, they literally run the gamut with the number of ways they can depict these molded statues. For portrayals of art imitating life, yet frozen in time, these figures do take on a life of their own to nightmarish degrees. Truly a lost art in more ways than one.
Avast ye landlubbers, shiver me timbers, it's salty wenches and scallywags off the starboard, it's a real poop deck, me hearties.
This one confused me at first because it's called The Depths, but you enter a mine shaft with coal diggers. When entering the submarine section, I was all out of sorts, but decided to just go with it. The sound of the background sonar was undeniably unsettling. Once creatures from the Black Lagoon appeared from the shadows, I understood the story that they were trying to tell. Slowly maneuvering past a minefield and walking through a corridor made of whale bones was legitimately eerie and added a new wrinkle to this threat that they posed. Basically, this maze spins that classic horror yarn of digging too deep, except in this scenario, they meant that literally. Just when I was getting vibes from the movie Alien, my inner monologue spoke too soon as you enter a room of green lighting and mist, which made for such a perfect homage to that classic film. The evil mermaids you crossed paths with were a nice touch. Anyone order the calamari? No, I'm allergic. I'll just eat from your plate. Well, that's awfully shellfish. Here's a giant octopus. The room that has the floors shift from side to side does an admirable job of simulating a rocking boat. The maze suitably ends with a shark attack. No matter how many times I see them, I love those giant animatronics attacking from the walls. Remember, once you're in too deep, there ain't no turning back. Speaking of Alien, we go from deep-sea horrors to terrors from the depths of space. Full disclosure, this maze was the tamest of the lot. I would have thought this venue would have been the most open to imagination and experimentation by the designers. But it basically just amounts to your standard alien contamination theme. I will give this house credit. It is more about set design than scares. It isn't bad, but it's definitely not on par with its fellow mazes, and, considering its theme, doesn't raise the bar in terms of its concept. Sadly, this house is about as unassuming as its title. Now, if you're talking sci-fi horror, then I'm talking Paranormal Inc. This Knott's Scary Farm classic is the complete opposite of Dark Entities, because, it's a haunted asylum. This maze should be cliched and overly familiar, but you don't have a crowd the likes that this premise gathers, especially a line of people willing to wait in the rain if the haunted house isn't any good. I do like the reality TV motif they go for. Its mix of modern abandoned asylum with old-timey music and medical practices gives me the vibe of the House on Haunted Hill. You can never go wrong with creepy nurses. Just ask Silent Hill. I don't know if their mention that this would be the last time that the house would be featured was meant to be taken literally or not, but if it is, I'm glad that I have experienced the asylum once more before its doors closed for good. I'ma call it right now. It is illegal to have any Halloween event without some form of creepy carnival maze. If you are caught running a haunted house without a killer clown, consider yourself an enemy of the state. I absolutely love the idea of an abandoned ride as a haunted house within a theme park. The sound of the electricity cutting in and out and power outages are a nice touch. The fact that this maze plays on classic hometown fair themes like a dark castle, dungeon, and a cave is excellent attention to detail. The best is when you pay a visit to the control room that you come face to face that the show is anything but under control. Despite abandonment, the show goes on. It's just lost its mind. Well, this wraps up my coverage from my first evening at Knott's Scary Farm. Join me for my review of Night 2. Immediately. Because I had visited all but one attraction, Night 2 at Knott's was more about loose-end mazes, repeat houses, scare zones, and stage shows. What a marvelous act the final haunted house proved. And for our next trick, I unwittingly saved the best for last. When speaking of the Waxworks house, this was the other maze that shares the top spot of this year's attractions. This house made the absolute best use of sight and sound of any maze all trip long. The narration throughout the maze was a stroke of brilliance. The hypnotist Mesmer casts his spell on you over the loudspeaker throughout your tour beneath his carnival tent. One of the houses I closed Night 1 with was Paranormal Inc. That reminded me of the House on Haunted Hill film. Well, one of the opening rooms of Sideshow of the Mind has a revolving room that has more than a passing resemblance to the Saturation Chamber of the 90s remake. Despite a sorcerer's parlor, it is still part of a carnival and thus features all the trappings that go with it. You have your Hall of Mirrors, an Indiana Jones-esque snake pit, well done by the way, something caught in the spider's web. You see gravity altering and clocks counting down. Your sanity, no doubt. And the optical illusions that make for a perfect addition. You're growing sleepy, sleepy. Your eyelids are growing heavy. Call me a demanding little diva, but I like my scare zones to have effort put into them. Not just run-of-the-mill monsters like zombies or gargoyle dolphins, but genuine thought put into subject matter, scare actor, and setting. It's a bit of a trade-off here between Universal Studios and Knott's. Halloween Horror Nights has in-theme park signposts, whereas the Scary Farm brings the scare zones and the shows. I correctly assumed that this scare zone theme centered on the dead returning not just from their tombs, but the swamps, a watery grave. The added touches of the gravestone within the crossroads of the park as well as the ambient fog gave this zone those extra ingredients to set these ghouls apart from simple zombies wandering their designated boundaries of the park. Ah, the dark days of decadence of a bygone era. I'm not sure why Prohibition is such a great time for ghosts to wander. Perhaps it's a time in history that refuses to die. Maybe that's when horror cinema was about to hit its stride. Maybe because of Hollywood's sordid past, acknowledging where the bodies are kept. Regardless, this scare zone of phantom gangsters and flapper dresses does bring a yesteryear charm to the scare zone, even if it is otherworldly. The following three zones are mere extensions of the park's mazes, which I've always enjoyed. I like the thought of an area of the park cordoned off that not only has its own interior haunted house, but exterior turf for monsters to roam. The Hollow is such a perfect expansion to the Pumpkin Eater maze. Scarecrows rise from the earth to wage war on the living. Despite making allusions to Sleepy Hollow, there's no horsemen, just an army of guardian farmers looking for mortals for the harvest. It's only fitting that the curse of the Calico would lie within the dark heart of a ghost town. This isn't just any scare zone, but actually the original. These aren't just any ghostly gunslingers, but phantoms fused with animals. There are many a horror that stalk the streets and prowl the fog. As much as the center of the theme park appears like an Old West prospector's town, the real centerpiece has always been the train come rolling in, perhaps arriving to ferry the dead to the next life. All aboard. Well, if we have a dark ride in store, surely there are jesters afoot. Send in the clowns. The website itself does these jokers justice. Knott's Boardwalk is taken over by Carnival, where the freak show is the main event and countless deviant clowns crave your undying attention. While undoubtedly the monster of the new millennium, it never ceases to amuse and amaze the fear with which people hand over to these jokers unlike any other film type. Let them guide your journey through the main street and see what tricks they have up their sleeves. While I didn't get to attend Invitation to Terror, I did make it to Wicked Drums. I don't know if I set my expectations too high or just imagined this show to match the quality of The Hollow and Pumpkin Eater. It's just witches casting a spell. I don't know if they were going for a weird sisters vibe from Macbeth, but that would only add to the disappointment. This show kind of fell flat, not just as a performance, but also as an addition to Knott's Scary Farm. This was definitely the weakest attraction of any within the theme park. Though the name is a bit misleading, this concert by the live band is enjoyable. They have clowns circulating through the crowd to either perform or get the crowd participation going. This had a good turnout, and, from the viewer's perspective, it's fun watching people have fun as they sing along or dance to the music. From the performer's POV, it is nice to see actors take their role seriously as they put on a show for the fans. If we're talking musical performance, Doce de la Noche steals the show as these punk rockers in Mexicano Day of the Dead regalia breakdance to popular music. This Sugar Skull dance troupe really go all out in impressive and often comedic fashion. Because this is an adult-themed show, it is one to watch out for. The illusionist knows how to entertain and bring the house down. Through sleight of hand and a flick of his wrist, his best trick is making any shadow of a doubt vanish into thin air. Despite what the name suggests, I thought that this was some hokey, family-friendly affair and missed it my first night. For this grave mistake, I owe Knott's Scary Farm a major apology, because I should have known better than to underestimate them. This is a combination adult-themed puppeteering by performers from the Jim Henson Company, improv comedy, and both driven by audience participation. To parody the latest James Bond movie, they had a 007 section that was hysterical, and a performance by a guidance counselor reprimanding us bad kids in the audience for enjoying this depravity that isn't to be missed. If you make it to Knott's this year, make sure that Puppet Up is on your itinerary because this show's got no strings attached and it isn't one to be missed. And there you have it, folks. This not only closes out my review of Knott's Scary Farm's 48th Halloween season, but the Fatal Attraction segment of the City of Angels. If you plan to do it all at Knott's, plan for a 2-night excursion. Start things off at the Pumpkin Eater Maze, enjoy the Scare Zone, grab yourself a churro, and don't miss Puppet Up Uncensored. If Delusion was the perfect kickoff to my week-long getaway, Knott's Scary Farm was the ideal curtain call to close out the show. As for me, I've been your ghost host incarnate reminding you, I ain't just a big deal, I'm the real deal. As for you and my channel,
warn your friends, warn everyone.